just a sub-fountain of the big Four Rivers fountain down in the middle of this stroll we'll take a look at in a moment. We're at the base of this stolen Egyptian obelisk. Is the Four Rivers fountain. I remember being here at nighttime actually in June with the students. Four statues were to represent the four continents that were known in 1650. This was done by Bernini. I don't know what it's made out of. I don't know if it's rock or cement or a combination of. There's also an armadillo to be discovered in this sculpture somewhere. There's a dragon. Looks like the tail end of a lion going into the rock. Here comes the lion, but I can't find the armadillo. The back end of the horse. That apparently is supposed to be the armadillo. This curved niche at the front of the church is supposed to epitomize the Baroque era. I don't know why. This was done by a pupil of Bernini's who ultimately became a competitor. I don't know what this obelisk is. Not even sure where it is. It looks like it was either covered or it was made this way even by the Egyptians, and pieces fell out and were replaced by just blank material. Appears to be a reference to Imperial Caesar. And this one has some of the same characteristics, but at least more panels of Egyptian writing. It's interesting to wonder what that mini monument on top is. That column I was just at is just behind my back. This is Trajan's column, and that's Via Corso there. I'll hang a left to go up a ways and then take a right, get back to the metro. I took a lot of footage of this arch yesterday. Now I'll describe it from Rick Steve's book. This is the Arch of Titus, Arco di Tito, and it commemorates the Roman victory over Judea, Israel, in AD 70. The Romans, of course, had a reputation for extreme leniency with peoples they conquered as long as they acquiesced to many of the things that were Roman, including their gods. They didn't mind if you worshipped your gods, but you had to now worship their gods also. Israel revolted against that. That's when the Romans attacked, conquered them, destroyed their temple, leaving only what's known today as the Wailing Wall, and brought home 50,000 Jewish slaves who were forced to build the arch. Interesting that this seems to be an analog to America bringing its slaves here. Of course, they didn't conquer them and bring them here in an attempt to conquer their nation and bring them as slaves booty, but the results were about the same, perhaps. The infusion of a large population of Jews into Europe, and with that stigma that the Romans created about Jews, perhaps. And here on the right, which I should have got a better shot of yesterday, is the Basilica of Constantine. And just to orientate you, I'm ahead of that arch, Titus's arch that you see ahead of my thumb, probably just a little bit this side of where that road goes off to the right, or pathway goes off to the right, to the Arch of Constantine. We'll be working our way down through the Forum. From my left, I'll pan down just to give us some orientation. Don't see an indication as to what these particular buildings are here. On the right, the Basilica of Constantine and Pan, rain starting to come. This is just to orientate myself. In the background, of course, the Victor Emmanuel Monument. There's an example of the apparent zero investment of the phenomenal amount of money they make from tourists coming into here. Definitely third world. And I believe these may be stones of the original Appian Way. If so, I can remember standing on these and reflecting on the charisma of place, realizing that people like Julius Caesar would have walked or rode down these very stones. All around us is the detritus of early Rome. These could have been an earlier surface. Standing inside the Basilica of Constantine. I purchased this tourist book, which you'll find very interesting in a moment. Here's pretty much the same view that I've got from where I'm standing right now. It's approximately this view. So here's the view in the book. Now I want to show you the interesting part. Here's what the basilica would have looked like originally, at least as estimated by archaeologists and CGI people. So we're looking down the nave, if you will, of the basilica. At the end would have been a statue, perhaps, of Constantine, or not sure who yet. And the same set of three arches would have been over here to our left. Presumably these in the center would have been other kinds of arches. I mean of pillars in the center of the basilica. Notice that the same arches are down there on that large remaining wall that we would see on this better remaining wall. Interesting looking at this detail, the size of the add-ons to the walls, if you will. And now you can see the purpose of these holes in the wall were to hold these additional pieces that were added. Notice as we look at the ceiling, there's a strong resemblance to the Pantheon. Probably for the same reasons, it reduced the amount of weight of material that you had to put in an arch, particularly as you got more and more to the top. Whether they used pumice as they did in the Pantheon, I don't know. Here a niche probably would again have had a kneel to it, some kind of statuary. We can see the remnant of it there at the bottom. Here's a close look at some fallen ceiling, and we can see that those indentations would simply have reduced the weight of what would have been inside those volumes. It appears that the material is the same as everywhere, this brick. But thinking back to St. Peter's Basilica, this was a monstrous building. I'm not sure if it was as long, but the arches are incredibly larger. The central arch was domed, as you can see. Now, an important note is a basilica in Rome was not a church. It was a court of law. But it was from the design of most basilicas of Roman nature that the churches were designed in the Middle Ages. And that's with a long nave and then aisles on either side, which these huge arched areas would represent. When the medieval Catholic Church built its huge churches that they called basilicas, it was because the design was based on the original Roman law buildings, such as this one, called basilicas. Now, a historical footnote, this was begun by Emperor Antonious, and called that Basilica Antonious. But when Constantine defeated him in the battle that changed certainly Christian history and European history, Constantine finished it and changed it to Constantine Basilica.